안녕하세요. Kim to the ok to the young 김호경입니다. 이상한 변호사 오영우 드라마 정말 재밌게 봤는데요. 오늘은 오영우처럼 변호사인 분을 만나볼 텐데 그냥 변호사가 아니라 국제변호사라고 합니다. 근데 심지어 한국에서 국제변호사로 일하고 계신 외국인 분인데요. 팀 디킨스 변호사님 만나보도록 하겠습니다. 안녕하세요.
네, 반갑습니다.
반갑습니다.
네.
Okay, so it's so nice to meet you. Please introduce yourself.
So my name is Tim Dickens. I'm a partner in the international team at Relocating. I've now been here for 11 years.
11 years,
it's a
wow.
very long time. So as I mentioned, partner in the international group, but also head up the Africa practice group. So we focus particularly on increasing trade and development between Korea and Africa.
Wow.
On top of that, I head up the South African Chamber of Commerce in Korea, so the chairman of the South African Chamber of Commerce. I do writing for the Law Times as a senior foreign contributor.
Oh.
And then a member of the international committee at the Korean Bar Society.
Wow.
So a number of different hats that I wear.
Yes, you do. You do have a number of titles. For people who don't know what international lawyer partner is, can you explain what you do exactly, within the lawyer? Yes.
Sure. So, as I mentioned, there's a number of different aspects to being an international lawyer, and it really depends on what areas you focus on. But I'll give you a breakdown of what I do and the cross coverage. So, I initially started as a disputes lawyer, so primarily looking at litigation and arbitration matters. So, for example, arbitration where Korean company, US company have a dispute gets resolved through arbitration. So that's always been my forte. And then about 6-7 years ago, I did a bit of a pivot to focus more on commercial transactions, which is more the general M&A work, due diligence, contract reviews. So obviously we've been focusing on a lot of project-based work because of the commercial side. And then a third part is data protection, which I'm not an IT person by trade, and I never thought I'd be involved in that. But international clients, particularly in Korea, the Personal Information Protection Act laws are very stringent. So for them to be compliant, they had a lot of questions in terms of, are they compliant? What do they need to do? So data protection became a sort of third part of the work, which is very important as well. And then, of course, there's business development. So obviously, we need to develop clients, so there's a lot of seminars that we produce or hold information sessions, online training sessions. So business development, I never thought growing up as a lawyer that would be a big part of the work. I thought we'd just sit in the office, but actually there's a huge amount of business development. So it's a lot of going out, meeting people, and hence being involved, for example, in Chamber of Commerce type events. You meet a huge amount of companies that are doing business here, people. So that's been very beneficial in terms of building the network. So it's a broad spectrum, and it sounds like a master of many things and a trade of many things, but a master of none. But yeah, that's essentially what we do.
Wow. Listening to all the things that you do, I'm like, the first thing that comes to my mind is, do you have time to rest? Do you have time to sleep? Get some sleep, go on holidays?
That's the trick, is to try and find the balance. And it's not easy because trying to wear different hats on different occasions. So I think the older we get, at least you can refine and understand where more attention needs to be put at what time. But that is a trick. And I think that's the work-life, what in Korea, right, is always what everyone's aiming for.
Yes.
Some lawyers, not particularly me, but some are here till 2, 3, 4 in the morning, which, there has to be a better way to do business sometimes. But, the amount of work sometimes is just...
It does take time, right?
It takes time. Yeah. It literally just takes a huge amount of time.
And there's so much things you're doing, you're involved in. You're not just doing commerce. You're not just doing one business. You're doing so many things, and there's so many different aspects. And I'm sure that takes a lot of work.
It does. And the worry is that I'm, sometimes missing something. I'm not paying enough attention. You want to do something properly, you need to spend time on it. So that's always the worry. But yeah.
Because a lot of projects go, it happens at the same time. You don't only work on one project.
Correct.
At once, right?
Correct.
There's various projects going on at the same time, right?
It's literally filling the gaps where the water starts, sort of breaking out the dam wall. Let's patch this up. Let's patch this up. So I'm not saying that's the most effective way, but
that's the reality. That's the reality. Wow. So how did you first come to Korea? When was it when you first came to Korea?
So in 2013, I was based in London at the time, working at a law firm there. And then Korea and the EU signed the FTA, which opened then the legal market for foreign firms to move into the Korean market. But also then naturally Korean firms were looking for international lawyers to sort of strengthen and bolster their international practice group.
Yes.
One of my good friends was Korean, and he'd mentioned, why don't you consider Korea as an option?
Ooh.
And to be honest, I was a little bored in London. It wasn't my lifestyle, to be honest, coming from South Africa. So I took a chance.
Ooh.
And the rest, so to say, is history. It's been a fantastic experience thus far.
But I'm sure you also had kind of like worried about like, will I be able to adapt well to Korea? Like, will I be able to live in Korea for a long time? Did you have any concerns?
So at the time, fortunately, I didn't think too deeply about those type of issues. I just sort of said, let's go and deal with it. Had I probably thought in more depth, I might not have made the decision. And a lot of my friends said, why are you going? That's, not the smartest of moves. But in hindsight, it was the right choice. And I ended up in the right place, I think.
Wow. And so far, so good?
Fantastic. It's been 11 years and it's been a wonderful experience thus far.
Wow, that's good. What would you say is the biggest difference between working in Korea and England or South Africa?
So I think probably on two fronts would be, obviously one is a pure legal one. So of course, Korean law is civil-based law and, the UK, South Africa is Commonwealth-based. Which means that, the difference of approach between, let's say, Korean lawyers and foreign lawyers is, the starting point is very different. Whereas Korea is, it's very formulaic in terms of what's in the law, that's what you have to follow. Whereas there's a lot more flexibility from the common law perspective. So often that's interesting, at least to try and find the overlap between the two different approaches. So that sometimes creates, I wouldn't say difficulty, but just conversations where your original sort of thought process is from a specific background.
Right.
But by being involved in the civil law, you see a different side and you can appreciate the nuances between the two. So I think that was always an interesting part to look at. Then I think the second part for me is a bit more culturally based. And I think that's the very hierarchical structure of Korean companies, particularly the sort of conglomerates, the chaebols, where it's very top heavy down.
Right.
The instruction comes down and, whereas in Europe or South Africa, it's a more sort of...
Right. It goes this way, horizontally.
Go horizontal way, this way.
Article, yeah.
And that creates difficulty sometimes.
That must have been really hard for you too. But also, just me hearing this, like, it's law, right? But English law, South African law, Korean law, it's all different, right? So when you were moving to Korea, did you have to study all Korean law?
No. But generally for international transactions, they are either governed by US law or British Commonwealth law. That's the sort of binding. And also for general international transactions, there's a lot of commonalities in terms of the general application of law. So the work itself is no different from what I was doing in London or South Africa.
Oh, okay.
From that perspective.
That's
so that
good. And did you have any kind of special episode or fun episodes that you've experienced while you're working in Korea?
My first week, just from a more cultural perspective, I went into the bathroom. And then suddenly the cleaning ajima was next. So I nearly had a heart attack.
Yes.
You wouldn't have that.
That's very common in Korea.
Yeah.
That's like a daily life in Korea, yes.
And then I was so shocked and sort of trying to hide from... And now I sort of greet them in the morning. It's very different. So that was a very fun experience. I watched a movie called Jerry Maguire. It looked like a fantastically exciting job with the whole of Africa, not just South Africa. There's only 1% to Korea and a great affinity to South Africa and Africa.